Shalom, my friends. I'm Rabbi David, and today I'm going to tell you something that will sound like the most dangerous advice you've ever heard from a rabbi. Stop working so hard, not because effort is wrong, but because you have been working with the wrong instrument entirely. And by the end of this teaching, you will understand the one mindset shift that the wealthiest people in Jewish history used, not as a supplement to their work, but as the foundation of everything they built. Before I reveal it, I need to ask you something honest. When was the last time you sat completely still? No phone, no screen, no noise, and simply let your mind rest in silence? Tell me in the comments, because that answer reveals more about your financial future than your bank balance ever could. And if this wisdom is already stirring something in you, please subscribe right now. I am on a mission to reach 50,000 people with genuine Torah wisdom about wealth and legacy, not motivation, not strategy. Ancient Jewish wisdom that has kept our people prosperous through every exile the world could produce. If you believe that deserves to spread, your subscription is an act of chesed. Hit the button now. Here is what I want you to do starting tomorrow. Before your phone, before your email, before the first demand of the day reaches you, sit alone in complete silence and do nothing for 1 full hour. I already hear you. Rabbi, I have children to wake, a business to run, responsibilities that do not wait. And that thought, that exact resistance, is precisely what is keeping the blessing at a distance. Because here is what the Torah shows us, if we are willing to see it. Every single figure in our tradition who moved from struggle to abundance, from obscurity to greatness, every one of them had one practice in common. They created space. They went to the wilderness. They climbed the mountain. They sat in the field. They were alone. And in that aloneness, something happened that no amount of hustle could have produced. Look at the pattern. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest leader our people. Where was he formed? In the wilderness. 40 years of silence, tending sheep, before a single public word. 40 days alone on Har Sinai, receiving the Torah. The blueprint for Jewish civilization was not received in a committee meeting. It was received in absolute solitude. Because God does not shout. God whispers, and you cannot hear a whisper in the noise. King David, the wealthiest king in Israel's history. Where was he before the throne? Alone in the fields outside Bethlehem. Years of solitude, sleeping under the sky. And it was in that silence he wrote the Psalms. It was in that aloneness he built the relationship with God that made him capable of leading a nation. The Psalms were not written in the palace. Wealth was born in the wilderness. And Elijah, the prophet, after his greatest victory, he collapses in exhaustion and runs into the wilderness. God sends an angel with bread and says, "Eat. The journey is too long for you." Then 40 days of walking alone. And when Elijah arrives at the mountain of God, there is wind, earthquake, fire. And the Torah tells us with extraordinary precision, God was not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. And after the fire, kol demama daka, the still small voice. The voice of thin silence. That is where God was, not in the spectacular, in the silence. This is not coincidence. This is a law encoded in the Torah from beginning to end. Wisdom comes from solitude. Clarity comes from silence. Blessing comes from stillness. Drop a comment right now and tell me, are you running from the silence or running toward it? Because your answer is one of the most revealing things you will ever examine about yourself. Now, let me give you the reasons. Because we are not a people who accepts beautiful ideas without understanding them. The Torah teaches, Naaseh venishma. We will do, and we will understand. So, let me explain why this works. The first reason daily solitude transforms your financial life is that it creates clarity. Real clarity, not the surface clarity of having made a decision, the deep clarity of knowing which decisions matter at all. King Solomon, the wisest and wealthiest man who ever lived, writes in Mishlai, Betach el Hashem bekol libecha, ve'al binacha altishan. Trust in God with all your heart, and do not lean only on your own understanding. The Kabbalists read this not as a warning against thinking, but as an invitation. Do not rely only on the limited understanding your noise-filled mind can access. There is a deeper wisdom available. It comes from stillness, from connection, from the silence that lets something larger than your own calculations speak. When I began practicing 1 hour of solitude every morning, something unexpected happened. I stopped being confused. Over weeks, a mental fog I had accepted as normal began to lift. I started seeing which of my activities were producing real fruit and which were only keeping me busy. I started understanding what I was actually afraid of beneath all the productivity, because the productivity had been hiding the fear. Clarity is worth more than strategy, and clarity only comes in silence. The second reason, solitude creates connection with the divine, and that connection opens channels no human effort can replicate. The Zohar teaches that there is a constant flow of Shefa, divine abundance, pouring downward through all the worlds into our reality. The question is never whether the Shefa is flowing. It is always flowing. The question is whether your vessel is positioned to receive it. A mind full of noise, a life built entirely around doing and producing and reacting. That is not a vessel in position. That is a cup turned upside down, wondering why it is not filling. When you sit in silence, you are not doing nothing. You are turning the cup right side up. You are creating what the mystics called tzimtzum hanefesh, the contraction of the self, the quieting of your own noise, so the infinite can be heard. King David writes in Tehillim, Dom la Hashem vehi tolelu, be still before God and wait for him. The word dom, be still, is the same root as silence, as quiet, as the absence of sound. And the promise is not conditional on your performance. It is conditional on your stillness. Be still, and the rest will be done for you. I had a student, I will call him Joseph, intelligent, driven, working 6-hour days, and nothing was working. Not for lack of effort, not for lack of intelligence, but for lack of silence. When I told him that his real problem was no stillness in his life, he looked at me as if I had suggested juggling. Rabbi, silence will not pay my bills. I told him, the bills are not being paid because you cannot hear the instruction that would pay them. You are too loud to receive guidance. He committed to 30 days, 1 hour of silence each morning. The second week, something shifted. In the quiet, he recognized he had been approaching a key client relationship entirely backward, trying to impress when he should have been listening. He changed his approach. Within 3 months, his revenue tripled. Not from a strategy I gave him, from what he heard when he finally became quiet enough to hear. Type in the comments right now, I am ready to be still. Not as a slogan, as a declaration. Because when you speak a commitment aloud, the Talmud teaches, you activate a different level of spiritual accountability. You are not just thinking it, you are beginning it. The third reason, and this is the one people are least prepared to hear, solitude creates self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is the true foundation of all wealth. Most people who struggle financially are not struggling because of missing information. We live in the most information-saturated moment in history. Everyone has access to business courses, investment strategies, financial frameworks. The information is not the problem. The problem is closer. It is inside. The limiting beliefs installed before you had the capacity to question them. The fears dressed as reasons. The patterns about money and worthiness and what you deserve, running silently in the background of every decision you make. These are invisible in the noise. They are only visible in the silence. The Torah tells us in Mishlai, Mikol Mishma Netzur Libecha, Kimi Menutot Saot Chaim. Above all, guard your heart. because from it flow all the outcomes of life. Not some outcomes, all outcomes. And if you have never sat quietly enough to know what is in your heart, you cannot guard it. You cannot change it. You are being led by programming you do not even know is running. 1 hour of daily solitude, practiced consistently, will show you things about yourself that years of other effort cannot surface. Not because silence is therapy, but because in the silence you cannot hide from yourself. And until you can sit with yourself in peace, you will never build anything that truly lasts. The fourth reason, solitude is where vision is born. In the Torah, every moment when a human being received a vision large enough to build something permanent, it happened alone. Abraham received the covenant in the deep darkness of night, watching the stars alone. Yaakov received his new name, Israel, alone, wrestling at the ford of the Jabbok. Joseph received his prophetic dreams alone in sleep. Moshe received the Torah alone on the mountain. The pattern is identical every time. The vision that changes everything arrives in solitude. The practical truth beneath the spiritual one is this: you cannot construct a vision while you are reacting to the present. Vision requires elevation, the ability to see past what is immediately in front of you. That elevation is impossible when you are constantly at eye level with the urgent. In solitude you rise, not because you are doing anything, but because you have stopped doing everything else. And from that height, you see what you cannot see from the ground. Share this video right now with one person in your life who is working extremely hard and not seeing the results their effort deserves. Because what they are missing might not be strategy. It might be this. The fifth reason, solitude is the birthplace of every real idea. The Vilna Gaon was known to sit in silence for hours before beginning any significant intellectual work. He understood what modern neuroscience is only now confirming, that the mind's most profound processing does not happen when it is actively engaged. It happens in the spaces between, in stillness, in quiet, the state the ancients called Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of holiness. A heightened receptivity where wisdom beyond ordinary reason becomes accessible. I have received more valuable ideas during my hour of solitude than in any meeting I have ever attended. I have solved in one quiet morning what I could not solve in weeks of active effort. This is not mysticism for its own sake. It is the practical technology of the Jewish tradition applied to the real challenges of a real financial life. The sixth reason, solitude creates energy. In Yeshayahu, the prophet writes, "Those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary." The mechanism of renewal is waiting, is stillness, is the silence of one who has stopped striving long enough to receive from a source larger than themselves. Every burned-out, depleted person I have counseled had one thing in common: no practice of true solitude. There is a profound difference between rest that merely stops activity and rest that genuinely restores the soul. Shabbat is the Torah's weekly embodiment of this principle. One day in 7, where we stop, where we create space for the divine presence to fill what we have emptied. You cannot receive what you have not made room for. Daily solitude brings Shabbat's restorative power into every single morning of your week. Now let me tell you how to do this practically. Because the Jewish tradition does not leave you with a beautiful idea and no path. Halacha is instruction, not philosophy. Starting tomorrow, not next week. Tomorrow, set aside 1 hour before any other demand reaches you. Wake earlier, if you must. Treat it as a meeting with the most important person in your life. Because it is. Find a quiet place. Sit. Phone in another room. No books, no music, no study. Simply sit and be still. Your mind will resist with everything it has. To-do lists will generate themselves. Your body will be restless. Your mind will insist. This is waste. All of that resistance is exactly why this practice is necessary. The noise you experience in the silence is the noise you carry everywhere. You are simply finally meeting it and beginning to quiet it. Do not force insight. Do not strain for revelation. Simply be present. Let whatever arises, arise and pass. After your hour, write for 5 to 10 minutes. What arose? What idea came? What fear showed its face? What clarity appeared that you did not seek? These notes are your inheritance, the record of a mind learning to receive what God has been trying to give it all along. And before you leave, speak this aloud. Ribbon Shel Olam, Master of the Universe. I am here. I have made space. I receive your wisdom, your guidance, your provision, with an open heart and an open hand. Let me tell you one more story. A woman I will call Sarah, corporate executive, successful by every external measure, but carrying a growing sense that she was building someone else's dream. She had her own vision. She could feel it, but never quite see it clearly. Every time she tried to plan it, the noise of her existing life drowned the signal. I introduced her to daily solitude, 90 days. She told me the first month was mostly learning to be uncomfortable. The second month, the vision began to clarify. Specific, detailed, the names of people she needed to call. By the third month, she had what amounted to a complete business plan she had never consciously written. It had come to her, one silent morning at a time. She launched. Within a year, she passed 7 figures. The vision came not from planning, from stillness. Commit in the comments right now. 90 days begins tomorrow. Because the moment you write it, the decision becomes real. The practice begins before the first morning arrives. And subscribe, because next week I am teaching the specific 10 word declaration the Kabbalists used to activate the flow of Shefa into the day ahead. 10 words, spoken with kavana at the start of your hour of solitude, that function as a spiritual key. Today, I gave you the foundation. Next week, I give you the activation. In Psalm 23, King David does not say, God blesses my hustle. He says, He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. The verbs are passive. God does the making, the leading, the restoring, and the condition, lying down, still water, rest. Velo exar, I shall not want, is attached not to effort, but to stillness, not to production, but to presence. The mindset that attracts wealth is not the mindset of the relentless acquirer. It is the mindset of the person who has created enough inner space that divine wisdom can move through them, who has become a proper kli, a vessel fit to hold the blessing, because the blessing is always flowing. The only question is whether you are positioned to receive it. Be still. Begin tomorrow. Shalom.